I feel more like a failure. The siege and strength of my ability to feed the family. Political victimization in a country can in less no time reduce you to poverty. When a minority controlling all the money and no justice in the land. Any man should take a stance. It's about that olive branch you send, not about opposition to government. To come down from a farmer to a beggar, waiting on a monthly check, government welfare. This is no way for a man to live. Counting coins cannot afford a food, and I'm expected to forgive while I'm still living on the sea. See, mama. In my day, I used to drive Land Rover, but today I take a bus to go everywhere. To you, I'm just another troublemaker who interview an endless or a teacher, and then go talk to a trucker, a builder, or a contractor. Then talk to any bus driver. And if you're still not sure, you really need to see a doctor. It's about that olive branch you send, not about opposition to government. To cut down from a business owner to a beggar, waiting on a monthly check from government welfare. This is no way for a man to live. Can't buy a stove, cannot afford a fridge, and I'm expected to forgive while I'm still living on the sea.
Yes, Dominicans, friends, followers, wherever you are this time, it's a pleasure. Yes, a pleasure, real pleasure to be in your company once more for today being the 24th day of March 2024. Welcome to that space, the Civic Vibes space, the program that is aired each and every Sunday from just about that time. It is making 5 minutes past the good old hour of 6 o'clock. And so that is where I want to welcome you in a very, very special way to that all-important program here this afternoon. Alvin Thomas is here, usually here, always here. I always say thank you, Alvin, for your patriotism to country. Whenever Alvin is called upon, he always answer that call. In just a while, we'll be hearing from him. We also have in our viewing and listening audience this afternoon a specially invited guest. And yes, you heard me right, a special invited guest, because at the end of the day, people, we have to thank persons for coming on and taking time off their schedule. They could have been doing things elsewhere, but they chose to be here. And so on that note, we from Civic Vibes want to thank very much Brother Cabral Douglas, a lawyer by profession from Dominica, of course, but living out there, but his heart is still in Dominica. And so whatever affects us in Dominica, no two, Cabral is hurting as well. And so we'll be hearing from him this afternoon on a some very poignant statements that a sitting judge here in Dominica made about 2 weeks back, the judiciary system in Dominica, especially as it relates to justice being meted out in Dominica. So Cabral is our guest this afternoon, a lawyer, as I said. So who better to help us understand or unpack, as it were, what that Judge Williams, had to say to us in Dominica. So folks, welcome on board. Without further ado, let me move across to Alvin Thomas and say hi and hello.
Well, thank you, Brother Lofty. Again, good afternoon, good evening. If I may say, it's 6 o'clock at your end and my end. Pleasant good evening to our many folks who have already logged in into the various social platforms that will be carrying live this broadcast. It's a pleasure to be back again. Another Sunday. I know last Sunday we had this very important electoral reform meeting taking place in Grand Bay. And I must say to you, Lofty, hats off and compliment you for a job well done. I think you and the team that were out there echoed the sentiments of the Dominican people as it relates to electoral reform. And you guys did a very good job of that. It is my hope, therefore, that not just the people of Grand Bay, but in general, everybody in Dominica will resonate fully with this whole question of electoral reform. It's at the heart of what our democracy should be. But this evening, again, as you said, we have a very interesting conversation as it relates to, I would use the same phrase that the sitting justice use, the rule of law. And I'm sure Cabral, as an attorney, will speak more directly to that. I mean, that in itself can take a whole 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions. And how do we, within the context of what the justice said, how do the rule of law and our democracy, which we see is at a crisis? So I'm happy to be part of that conversation with Brother Douglas, always stimulating, engaging. So I want to thank him as well for taking the time off to be with us. And of course, to the many persons who have already logged in and ready to roll with their cup of Simecotois tea or whatever they have, or spice or kako tea or a little of that. You guys have a new drink down there. What do you call it again, Lofty? The one that's a little stronger, which I don't drink anymore. The old man don't drink that anymore. What do you call it? Fellas like you drink it.
Alvin,
he's smiling.
I don't drink that strong, so I won't know what to call it. But I know there are many names circulating around.
BB, they call it the BB.
BB, Boaba D, meaning BB, Wabio, Lapset, all these kind of things. But yeah, I don't go that strong.
A pleasure to have you folks. And as I said, I'll look forward to a really good conversation, as I normally like to phrase it.
Yeah. All right, Alvin, thank you very much, my brother, for your opening words here. Let me now move across to our brother, Cabral Douglas is in the house. Cabral, a special good afternoon to you, my brother, and how are you?
Very well, thank you, Lofty, and thank you for inviting me on the program once again. It's always my pleasure and honor to participate in the best, most inquisitive, most insightful program on the airways right now in Dominica, shedding light on a number of important issues as it pertains to governance, as it pertains to our democracy, as it pertains to the future of the country. And I really appreciate being here. Of course, the topic of discussion is very important with the startling revelations by a sitting judge, which I think are unprecedented in the sense that for a sitting judge who is very much part and parcel of the administration of justice to be making such harsh criticisms of that very system, and to be able to unpack what are the implications of that for the average Dominican, what is the implication of that for the rule of law in Dominica, and what are the remedies, if any, that that can be proposed going forward in order to ensure that constitutional rights of Dominicans are being upheld, and the system of justice, which is a pillar of the democracy in any country, maintains its integrity, maintains its impartiality, and maintains its credibility, without which you can spiral downward very quickly in terms of maintaining a semblance of due process and rule of law in any given country. So I look forward to taking part in the discussion. And once again, I would like to say good afternoon to all the Dominicans tuning in from at home and abroad. And I look forward to engaging with you this afternoon in a very important discussion.
Yes, indeed. Gabriel, just before we go further, can you just, I'm seeing a little too much of above your head. Can you just bring up that PC or whatever you're using a little more so we can see a little lower of your upper torso? Right, yeah. Voila. All right, right there. Perfect. All right, perfect. Yes, we're seeing much more of your face now. That's good. All right, so Cabral, thank you again, folks. You heard Cabral's opening, and so yes, with that opening, you are so indeed set for a very interesting conversation. The call sometime later when we open the lines, the numbers are 245-2396 or 615-9470. I'll plug those numbers in the chat so you have no excuse not to call into the program sometime later. Also, those folks on YouTube and Twitter, we are streaming there as well. The old Facebook, we are right there as well. So good evening to each and every one of you at this time. Pleasant good afternoon in particular to the Catholics among us. Today is your day, being Palm Sunday. And so we welcome you on board in a very, very big way. Folks, what I'll be doing just before we make that all important, dig into the conversation. We are talking about some utterances from a sitting judge, namely Mr. Colin Williams. And so those of you who have not read it, have not seen it, don't know about it, I'll be taking time, just before we go into the meat of things to read those utterances from the judge so that you can be much more informed as to the conversation we're having here and trying to put those utterances rather of that judge into proper context. But Alvin, before we go there, any further thoughts from you, Alvin? You are muted, Alvin. Unmute.
No, sorry about that. Yeah. No, I was saying Cabral put it quite right. And you know what disturbs me a bit, Lofty. And I said so, I think, on the program we had prior, to this one, that we as a country, as a nation, fits the definition of what one might call a failed state. And I say so with a heavy heart, because those of us who know what a failed state is will recognize that's where we are. Because our institutions of democracy are crumbling or have crumbled. We talk about electoral reform. Elections and a democracy go hand in hand. So that institution is no longer there. Our judicial system now, the rule of law has crumbled. We do not have an integrity commission. That's crumbled. The public service is masticulated, and the public service commission, nepotism. So those major institutions that keeps the democracy alive are seriously compromised or crumbled. So we have a failed state. I don't even need to spend time on the economy. No manufacturing, no agriculture, lack of tourism, banking system limited, energy, dumb-leg shedding, water problem. I mean, you name it. International relations, problem with our passports. Fugitives and criminals have diplomatic passport and citizens. Chokski, statewide instability, police arbitrary arrest of citizens. You can't protest. They pick you up and then they release you. And if you're opposition, so It's a lot, Lofty, but I think what we are going to discuss today as it relates to rule of law and the judicial system is so critical, because once your democracy gets to the point where your judicial system is so severely compromised, as the judge made mention of, then you know what you got? You got anarchy. And you know what you have? You have a tyranny is beginning to reign, because no longer you can go to a system if there is an issue between two people and say, well, let me go to the court, and at least the courts will listen to me. I have to take the matter into my own hands. Yeah. And that allows for anarchy. And I'm afraid, like the judge says, more of us need to speak up, because again, it's been said that evil is allowed to thrive when good people sit back, say nothing, do nothing.
Yeah. All right, Alvin, thank you very much, my brother, again, for your fine comments here as we're about to make a start here. Folks, we'll be, as we're about to dig deep, as I said, we'll be referencing or touching first the unfolding situation in Haiti, and use some examples from Haiti, past, present, and maybe even future, and dovetail it to the situation in Dominica. So that conversation, I can tell you, it's very, very interesting indeed. But first and foremost, let me give credits or kudos to the media news outlet in Dominica, from which the article I'm going to read in just a while stemmed from, and that is none other than Nature Isle News. So big up yourself, you guys at Nature Isle News. But the journalists in particular from Nature Isle News who read that story or who recorded that story from the court is none other than Miss Ronalda Luke. So Miss Luke, a pleasant good afternoon to you indeed. And thank you for your very unbiased work in the field of journalism in Dominica. All right, folks, the judges, it's in caption there in terms of the headline. The judge said, there are weaknesses that need to be cured in Dominica's judicial system, says High Court judge amid calls for remedial action. The report starts by saying, in a resounding call to action, Dominica's High Court judge, His Lordship Justin Colin Williams, has boldly addressed the critical flaws which, according to him, undermine the essence of justice in Dominica's judicial system. With unwavering conviction, Justice Williams has sounded the alarm on the pressing weaknesses that urgently require remedy to ensure the nation's effective and efficient administration of justice. At the recent close of the January session of the High Court, Justice Williams contended that the rule of law is being compromised by systematic failures within the judicial infrastructure. The relationship, or the revelation rather, of overcrowded prison cells and the prolonged duration of cases before the court, plagued by lengthy delays in trials, was cited by Justice Williams as clearly indicators underscoring the urgent imperative for reform. With a sense of duty and responsibility, His Lordship emphasized the importance of speaking truth to power, even in the face of discomfort or resistance. Open quote, when things are wrong, they want you to say all is well, but it is not, the judge remarked, highlighting the prevailing culture of complacency that threatens to erode the fabric of justice. I have to temper my words here very carefully because people get very sensitive when you speak the truth. They don't like you to say true things. They prefer you to be diplomatic or nice and pretend that all is well when it is rotten, close quote. He continued, in this particular era, you can't offend people. And if speaking truth offends them, then you can't speak it. And you must tell people that they are doing well when they are not. Drawing attention to the backlog of cases and the excruciatingly slow pace of the preliminary investigations, that is the PI, Justice Williams questioned the definition of success in the context of the judicial system. Despite boasting a 100% completion rate for the January session, the judge challenged the notion of success when hundreds languish in prisons without trial for years on end. So, What is success? He challenged. From these assizes between January and March, we had 13 matters, and from this, only 2 went to trial. From the 13 matters are completed. This is a success, isn't it? That's 100% record. We have no matters left over, but tell that to the 119 males sitting down in the prison on remand, awaiting trial. Now, is that success? Justice Williams' scrutiny further extended to the alarming delay in bringing cases to trial, with some matters pending for nearly a decade. Such egregious delays, he posited, not only undermine the principle of justice, but also jeopardize the integrity of the legal system as a whole. So, are we using time efficiently and effectively? He inquired. I ask these questions as a person who is part of the administration of justice and who must see things of a particular perspective as to how we do preserve the rule of law. Furthermore, Justice Williams lamented the fact of the lack of urgency in addressing preliminary inquiries, citing unacceptable timelines and prolong the suffering of both the accused and the victims. The judge advocated for the adoption of best practices from all jurisdictions where expediency and efficiency are prioritized without compromising due process. The standard dictates that matters should reach the High Court within a year. In colonial times, when we had massa, they would do it. Now, all of a sudden, we become independent and laid back, making it seem as if we are incapable of doing things effectively and efficiently, when it is not so, because our jurisdiction, like us, can do it. He pointed to a recent matter dealt with by the High Court, which occurred in 2014. There were 2 witnesses in the matter, and it reached me in 2024. 2 witnesses. What is a success again, I ask? What is an achievement? Are we delivering justice to the people of the Commonwealth of Dominica? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the rule of law is important, and the rule of law can be upheld in such circumstances. His Lordship left no room for ambiguity, asserting that the current state of affairs is unattainable and demands immediate redress. This is your country, he said. We have to do better, the judge declared, echoing the sentiments of the nation's yearning for a judicial system that upholds the rule of law in its truest form. It is not a personal reflection or any individual that I am pointing fingers at anybody, just raising questions and identifying the weaknesses that we need to cure. The rule of law is being undermined by persons who must know better and can do better. He said, I've read further, by all means, if someone is guilty, they must face the consequences of punishment, convict them, but a person is not expected to be punished awaiting a trial. Also, the people who are being punished are not just the accused, but those whom the offense has been committed against, because their matters are not coming up, and ultimately what happens is memory fades, witnesses disappear, die, or they become no longer interested. I suppose this is the style of the Commonwealth of Dominica, but it is a style that is not conducive to the delivery of justice. In closing, His Lordship posited that the notion of success in the context of court proceedings must transcend mere statistics. While achieving a 100% completion rate may seem commendable on the surface, it rings hollow when juxtaposed against the stark reality of overcrowded prisons and countless lives left in limbo. The final paragraph reads, the 100% disposal looks good, but it is bad because of the 119 inmates on remand. And if 119 people are in prison awaiting trial, what about those who got bail? So just think about it. How many people in Dominica are waiting trial while we close the assizes in March with no work to do? end of that reporting from the court. Folks, so basically here you had it in terms of the words of this judge. We are going to dig deeper where Mr. Cabral Douglas, a lawyer by profession, is said, is going to help us understand exactly where we are in Dominica as it pertains to the words of the judge. Brother Cabral, based on what I read, what you have been reading, what you know about us in Dominica, especially as part of the judiciary system, what is your take as we open up that conversation, brother?
Well, Lofty, those remarks by the sitting judge are indeed very scathing. I would go as far as to say the remarks are unprecedented. We have to understand what the role of the judge is in the legal system. Not only is the judge required to sit impartially and adjudicate on matters that come before him or her, but he also has the responsibility of upholding the system of justice, and he also has to instill a level of confidence in the system. So, for example, in order to uphold the impartiality of the system, judges are not allowed under their ethical obligations to show any favoritism towards a political party. You won't see a judge calling in talkback radio to give his views on any particular public matter. Although he has the right to align himself with a political party and vote for that political party, he cannot express those sentiments publicly. And so the judge is his persona, his attitude towards the administration of justice is very important, particularly a high court judge. So in order for him to maintain the confidence in the judiciary, and that being part of his ethical obligations, we have to look at his comments within that context. So we've heard judges in the past, for example, who were outgoing judges, look back on their career and make recommendations as to how the judiciary could be improved. We've heard litigants that have brought their matters before the court criticize the decisions of a judge, which may be subject to an appeal. And then you can go through the various steps to go to the Court of Appeal, and then the CCJ or the Privy Council, etc., because judges often get decisions wrong. So built into the judiciary is a system where you can get redress in the event that judges make bad decisions, or they misapply or misinterpret the law. So there's nothing wrong with criticizing a decision of a judge. But for a judge that is sitting to criticize the judicial system and the functioning of that judicial system, even going as far as to suggest that it undermines the rule of law, is something that every single citizen needs to take very seriously, because what that does, true or false, it undermines the confidence in the legal system. And once you have and the legal system and its credibility is resting upon the confidence of the public. So your legal system's got to be predictable. Your legal system has got to be transparent. Individuals are entitled to their constitutional rights, like the presumption of innocence, right to a fair trial, right to a speedy trial. And one of the issues that he makes reference to is the length of time that some of these trials are taking. And as a result of that, individuals are being left to languish in remand or in custody for lengthy periods of time. And so what we have to understand about that is anytime a trial drags on for longer than it needs to and is unnecessarily and unreasonably delayed, the prosecution of that case becomes much more difficult, because individuals' memories start to fade, witnesses may relocate, other witnesses may decide that they're no longer prepared to cooperate in the case. And as a result of those delays, the prosecution case now becomes more difficult to prosecute, which should, in fact, pave the way for the defendants in those cases to be able to have those charges dismissed, as is the case, as the defense team of the Lennox Linton, Edison James, and other members of the opposition should be looking at ways and means to have those charges dismissed because of the length of time that it has taken and the undue stress and unreasonable amount of time that it's imposed on those defendants, and whether or not those issues undermine their ability to get a fair trial. Now, although none of them are actually in custody, that's another case, but to have the case languishing for so long is a major issue. As for individuals in custody, we have to look at the question of bail. The justice referred to the issue of bail. Now, not every defendant is entitled to bail. Your lawyer, on behalf of the defense, needs to make an application to the court, which may be opposed by the prosecution, or it may not be opposed by the prosecution, and the judge has to consider a number of criteria to determine whether or not bail would be reasonable and applicable under those circumstances. If we look at the current case before the court right now with the double murders that have taken place in Sofria, for example, it would be an interesting question to see if those that were charged with the murder of the two Canadian hoteliers would be eligible for bail, because first of all, they're foreigners, so that makes them a flight risk. We got to look at the charge, which is double murder, which is a very serious criminal offense. And so there's a number of issues and criteria that the judge would have to look at, make a determination on whether it is appropriate for individuals to receive bail. One of those criteria is, of course, your past criminal record, the seriousness of the offense, whether or not you're a flight risk, and they would outline a number of conditions under which bail may be granted or bail may be denied. And it would be appropriate under certain circumstances for bail to be denied. So we can't necessarily look at the entire system with a broad brush, because of course, each case has its own peculiar facts and circumstances. But generally, I would say that the comments by the judge were extremely scathing, need to be taken very seriously. I would expect organizations like the Bar Association to comment on those observations and make certain recommendations as to how those defects that have been highlighted could be addressed. So this is unprecedented in terms of what the judge had to say, and it would be very interesting to see what happens in this very high-profile international criminal case that is currently before the courts in Dominica, which will be observed and scrutinized by, of course, the Canadians and other international observers because of the identity of the victims in the matter.
Wow, Cabral, very thought-provoking thoughts here. I must say thank you very much indeed for, just laying down the foundation for the conversation to come. Thank you indeed, brother. Alvin, you too have read the report. You have your own analysis, your own perspective of what you read. You heard Cabral in terms of his explanation thus far. What are some of your thoughts, Alvin?
Well, thank you, Lofty. Well, just to add as well, let us look at this as well in its full context, because what happened at the end of the September session of last year, the judge issued a statement. That also is reported in the DNO. A long statement the judge issued at the end of September, where he spoke about the magistracy and the fact that the magistrates are doing some stuff or are not conducting in a manner in keeping with the judicial system. There was a long report on that. Those of you listening and online can Google it, DNO, a 3-page report where he spoke about some of the serious deficiencies in the system. And here he comes back again at the end of the close of the January session, and issue yet another. So in my own mind, I would think he issued that statement in September, October, November, December, January, 4 months later. I suppose maybe he didn't even see any attempt at anyone to say or do something. And he came back again in January. And because when he issued that statement back in September, he says there that, for example, the new resident judge in Dominica minced no words in his critical evaluation of Dominica's magistracy unequivocally unequivocally criticizing what he considered the lack of productivity and output, resulting in unsatisfactory levels of performance. That's back in September. And then he came in December. The question I want to pose to Cabral is, and there's one issue which we will deal with maybe later on, we haven't dealt with, the fact that the superintendent of prison also issued a report at the end of that session, and striking in there are 56 persons that are allegedly inmates who are mental people. The judge made that comment in his first report. We now have persons who are mentally not well in a prison. The question I have for Cabral, how does that impinge on a person's human rights? So here you are charged for a crime, allegedly. You are sitting there for 10 years. You're mentally challenged. You should not be in a prison in the first place. What redress do you have, locally or even internationally, as far as your own rights, your human rights, your constitutional rights? Where can we go with that? Or should they just languish where they are?
Yeah, that's very unfortunate, obviously. But just going back to the judge's comments that you referenced a while ago, the judge seems to be speaking about the administrators working within the judiciary. So he seems to be saying that the administrators are not putting in the work. They're not putting in an efficient, effective day's work in order for the system to function productively. That's what he seems to be saying. He seems to be saying I'm implying from what he's saying is that there's an attitude of malaise as to we're going to do as little bit as work as possible at the expense of those whose lives are dependent on an efficient, effective running system. So he's not necessarily attacking whether or not the outcome of the various cases are being tainted by political influence, for example.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, there's been, like, for example, if you look at the case that has been brought for incitement against members of the United Workers' Party, it has been suggested that that is a politically motivated prosecution, as opposed to a prosecution that's brought with merit. Now, that's not what the judge is saying, because in order for a DPP to bring a case, they have to be sure or relatively certain that there is a reasonable prospect or probability of success. Success meaning a conviction, because they're using public funds to prosecute a specific individual. And in that particular case, if you're contracting with senior counsels or king's counsels from Trinidad to prosecute members of the opposition, that might give the appearance of politicization. But the other thing that he talked about was the inquiry stage or the committal process. And I think this is the area where the lawyers themselves, the defense lawyers, have to be more active, because during the committal stage of the process, there is where you have an opportunity to scrutinize the evidence of the prosecution. There is where you have the opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses of the prosecution. So in other words, you have the opportunity to not only be served the brief of evidence to examine the strength of the case and appropriately advise your client, but you have an opportunity to, before the court, test the evidence to see whether or not it is strong enough to transfer to the higher court to be prosecuted. And the lawyers need to take the responsibility in that area. The lawyers that are fighting on behalf of their client need to ensure that every stone is unturned to uncover the deficiencies in the prosecution case and raise them in open court as early as possible to have the effect of having charges dropped, having charges withdrawn, because the DPP and these senior counsels don't want to embarrass themselves and bring a case with deficient evidence before the court. So it's up to the defense counsel to pursue those issues. It's up to the defense counsel to pursue the issue of if their clients are languishing and they're mentally unstable, it's up to their attorneys to pursue those issues on humanitarian grounds, on constitutional grounds. You can file emergency applications. So there needs to be more of a judicial activism on the part of the attorneys. And some of these cases might not be financially rewarding, but as far as pursuing human rights, pursuing constitutional rights, and pursuing the best interests of your clients, this is where the lawyers, I would challenge the lawyers in Dominica to step up to the plate and make the appropriate judicial action in order to bring these matters to light. And I would also say that the Bar Association, which is supposed to be independent, civil society, looking after the rule of law in the country, they have to be more vocal in pointing out discrimination, in pointing out injustice in the community. And so that it can't simply be with those responsible to administer justice. It's a system that relies on multiple individuals for it to function properly. The defense counsel has a role to play, the administrators have a role to play, and of course, the judge has a role to play. But unless you bring the issue to the attention of the court is not going to intervene. There's a lot of illegality going on in Dominica that has never been brought to the attention of the court. Like, for example, I'll give you the most glaring example. The opposition United Workers Party has claimed that there are $6.4 billion of passport revenue that is being misappropriated by the government of Dominica. Now, that is a huge claim to be making. There's a lot of illegality involved in that. If that claim is, if any part of that is true, and that can be justified and substantiated, then that is the type of thing that would cause persons to be arrested, persons to be convicted, judges to make orders to return the money, repatriation. But we're not seeing any activism taking place. It's not good enough to say the money is missing. What action are the lawyers taking to force the government to answer questions so the matter could be adjudicated in a transparent process? So that's not the government's fault. That rests with the lawyers that are advising those that are making the claim, not taking any steps that anybody could identify to bring these matters to light. And that's what happens. So the government can do what they want until you bring an application to the court seeking a remedy. Then there's no illegality there. It's up to those that are making the claim to bring forward the claim, bring forward the evidence, and force those responsible to answer questions. And in the current environment, the powers that be are never being put in a position to answer questions. It's only the opposition that's being put in a position to answer questions while they're being brought before the court. And that is the imbalance that we have in the system.
Yeah.
But
Very
let me ask a quick
indeed.
question as we see that. Just very quickly, Cabral. In light of what you've just said, don't you think it's a matter of a lack of confidence, credibility, and all what is in the system why folks are not doing that? And also, as you said, the defense. If the defense attorney, most of those, as you say, there are no financial benefit. So what redress does this poor guy who is mentally challenged, who doesn't maybe have an attorney where he can afford to pay, or maybe he has, I'm not sure what he has, what redress is there? Because this seems to be where we are, that people seem now to lack the confidence and credibility. How do we address that?
Well, that particular issue that you raised, Alvin, is not peculiar or specific to Dominica. So the judicial system, whether it's in America, England is an exception. England, the system is publicly funded. And when I worked in England as a defense attorney, I used to work with some of the finest barristers in England, and the government would fund their defense. So you could have Joe Blow living on a council estate who was accused of a serious crime, and they would get the finest, most educated, most articulate barrister to come and fight on his behalf every step of the way. And that was actually, and the reason why the barristers do it, they weren't rich barristers. The barristers did it because they were driven by a sense of justice.
Justice.
That's why people don't become lawyers for the money. There's a lot. If you want to make a lot of money, there are a lot of professions you can go into. There's a lot of businesses that you can go into. People tend to be attracted to the law because they have an insatiable desire for justice, right? So let's take the $6.4 billion accusation, for example. If you seriously believe that $6.4 billion has been misappropriated from Dominica, which is multiple times the GDP of Dominica, and you believe that that is the case, you will find highly articulate and impressive barristers to run that case for free, just because they want their name associated with bringing such an injustice to light. So barristers will do work for free if it's something that they want to be associated with, right? You'll find that out. But you have to take the first step. You got to show that this is a young nation which is struggling financially, that has billions of dollars to turn the situation around, but the government has misappropriated billions of dollars, and they've done that in the collaboration with foreign mercenaries, which is the accusation. And if we allow this thing to continue, then we could be spiraling into a situation where people lose confidence in our public institutions, and we could move closer towards a failed state, right? But you have to take the initiative. Nobody's going to solve the problem for you. You got to lead the way, and that's what's lacking in the opposition and in Dominica. Why the government is allowed to run roughshod over the opposition. But as far as those individuals languishing in jail, it is a fact in most countries that if you want to have decent opportunity to fight against the judicial system, you need an advocate making representations on your behalf that is present and fearful and has an insatiable appetite to pursue justice. So these are the kind of individuals that you want working for you, not somebody who's there to exploit your hardship for their own financial gain. And a lot of lawyers have gone down that path as opposed to the path of seeking justice, which is the reason why they went through all the hard years of study to become a lawyer in the first place.
Yeah. Cabral, I'm a man on the ground, Cabral, and I'm going to give you the very real situation as it pertains to the topic under scrutiny tonight. The lawyers in Dominica, particularly, who are supposed to be seeking for justice, as you mentioned before, on behalf of his or clients. The realities in Dominica, Cabral, if, for example, a case is now on, you have some matter that you need to bring to court, especially those of public interest. Cabral, the lawyers that you can find in Dominica to even sit and have a conversation with you about a matter of that nature or matters of that nature, you can basically count them on one hand. And so here is this now, this sort of laissez-faire attitude on behalf of these group of people who are supposed to be standing in the gap as it pertains to justice. So when the powers that be realize, hey, the lawyers or the men and women who should know better, who are supposed to be standing up in defense of justice, they are lagging at the back. And sad to say, most of them are just waiting from crumbs from the government, waiting for some kind of legal work to be done, whatever, whatever is happening. And so you now find that level of apathy as it pertains to taking on matters that really matter. That is just the reality of the situation that I'm presenting to you. And so just to alert you of the statement that you made before, where you said that lawyers are supposed to be doing much more in terms of pushing back against the system.
That's right. Yes, because without that is the issue that is holding back the accountability. The government is doing what's in its interest, and there's no pushback against what they're doing. Whether it's public procurement, you have one company building all the houses in Dominica, for example. Was there any tendering process for that contract? Was there any tendering process for the international airport? That's $1 billion, the biggest public service contract in the history of the country. Was there any tendering process in that? Is there anybody filing an injunction? Is there anybody seeking any judicial review? You know, we have billions of dollars missing. Is there any judicial review? Is there any private prosecution being initiated? So you can't be having these huge, monumental, you know, life-changing issues that are in the public domain being discussed, and there's no judicial action being taken to address them. That is the issue, you know. So it's not just it's not that the government is acting in any particular way. It's that the government is not being forced to answer any questions. That's the issue. You know, during election time, there's no debate. So the prime minister is not answering any questions during election time, during election campaign. During the press conferences, most of the journalists are state entities. So the prime minister is not answering any questions there, you know. Right now in the parliament, you have a speaker of the house that's constantly shutting down the opposition. So the government is not really answering any questions there. So the government has got accustomed and comfortable not answering questions, you know. So that is the issue. As long as the government doesn't have to answer any questions, as long as the government doesn't have to be held accountable, they will continue to do exactly what they're doing. And why wouldn't they? You know, I mean, think of it. If you didn't have to answer any questions, why wouldn't you just keep doing exactly what you're doing?
No, you are absolutely right, Cabral. You're right. You're right on target, and that's why, like you said, it's really a travesty. One would say justice when you have all of those lawyers in Dominica who, for whatever reason, does not see the need to address those issues. Yeah. And what that does, it leaves us, the citizen, with a lack of confidence in the judicial system. And that should not be the case. I recall a while back, you had a committee of concerned lawyers back in 2020 or there, about 4 years ago. They had raised some issues concerning, I think at the time it was a sitting judge, Bernie Stevenson, in the matter as it relates to the election petitions of the 2019 elections. And that has just gone on the website. And it's really, I'm trying to find the right word. Like the judge said, he has to be careful what language he uses. It's really disturbing that you have lawyers back home that don't see the need to stand up on certain issues. I mean, I don't want to stray away from the point we're discussing, but for example, the botanical garden is a big issue. Recently, they said there have been some work bulldozing taking place in the garden. Now, you know, Cabral, a citizen can file a lawyer, with the help of a lawyer, can file an injunction in the court to stop whatever work that's taking place in the gardens.
Yes.
Under the Physical Planning Act, you cannot touch certain properties, certain areas, unless certain things are done.
And just to back up your point, what Cabral was saying before, once that is filed, then the government would have no choice but to answer questions.
Absolutely.
Because these questions, they are not answering before this project starts anyway.
You can't put a bulldozer in and you just bulldoze and do what you want. No. A citizen and a lawyer should file an injunction. What are you doing? Is there an EIA? What is the project? Are the citizens?
That's where the question
comes. What
is
is the community?
Yeah.
But the lawyers sit back, they do nothing. The citizens get scared and lack confidence in the system. And we are here where we are today. So,
yeah.
Yes. So,
all right, folks,
so
it is five. Yes. It is, folks, it is 5 minutes to the hour, 7 o'clock. We're going to take a break in the next 5 minutes. We're talking, if you're just tuning into the conversation, Brother Cabral Douglas, a lawyer by profession, basically going through some utterances of a sitting judge, made some striking comments, read the judiciary system in Dominica. Cabral, yes.
Yes, so I think Alvin hit the nail on the head. You know, we have to, the laws of Dominica are on the books. The Constitution is clear. The laws are clear. We're talking about public procurement of the biggest project in the history of Dominica, where there was no tendering process involved. We're talking about a massive housing revolution where none of the contracts were tendered. We're talking about electoral reform. It's a public contract. Sir Dennis Byron. Was any other judge considered? What was the tendering process? How was he selected? Nobody knows, you know. All we know is that Dominica joined the CCJ under Byron, and then subsequently Byron was appointed to preside over elections in Dominica. I mean, right there, that shows you a conflict of interest, prima facie, on the face of it. But nobody's asking any questions about that. You look at the contract of Sir Dennis Byron. Sir Dennis Byron was to receive half of his payment prior to the release of the report, and the second half on the release of the report. So after the initial stages of the report, Prime Minister calls an election. Nowhere in the report does it say anything about the fact that an election was called, which obviously would frustrate the contract of Sir Dennis Byron, who was contracted to produce a report prior to the elections taking place. There's not one court action filed over the appointment of Sir Dennis Byron under those dubious circumstances, you know. So now we want to come and say, well, okay, now we disagree with the proposals for electoral reform. It's probably too late at this stage. Right now, the government's going to take the recommendations to Parliament, and the Parliament is going to pass the legislation, and Scarrett is going to sweep the next election. That's what's going to happen, because when the opportunity was there to put a stop to it, to raise the pertinent issues, the lawyers didn't want to speak out. That's the issue. That's what's causing the problem.
Wow, Cabral, I'm sitting there and, sort of a lot of thoughts going through my mind at this time. But thank you, Cabral, for your thoughts. Alvin, I see you laughing. Any final thoughts before we go?
No, like you, Lofty, like you. My only, I am always a man of hope. And I would hope that some of the lawyers out there hearing us tune into the program, or someone will convey to them. They're hearing Cabral. Cabral is an attorney by profession. So he understands, no stranger to what, what is taking place. And I think his comments are well on point. And again, I will say, Lofty, part of what is happening to us, unfortunately, is when good people sit by and do nothing, which includes some of our attorneys. And there are a number of issues that can be challenged in the court. Put it before the courts. Let the court make a determination.
That's right.
Outside of that, we just operate like it's anarchy. But nobody is the government do as and how they please. The citizens, those who have no recourse, and we just languish. So again, the benefit of this program that we're having, and I saw a number of persons on the feed are making comments. It's all well and good for us to make those comments that we're making. The judge made his. Cabral is making comments. I'm making comments. At the end of the day, we have to take some action.
That's 100%.
That's the purpose of this program. We make those comments. What are we, each of us, those on the feed, are going to do? How do we engage each other to take some form of action?
Yes.
Go ahead, Cabral.
Yes, I mean, I think again, you hit the nail on the head. So in Dominica, the institutions of democracy exist. The laws are on the books. The Constitution is clear. So earlier, I heard you mentioning a failed state, right? Like, for example, Haiti is a failed state because the institutions do not exist. You have leaders who have been assassinated. You have a number of leaders that have been assassinated in Haiti, a number of leaders that have been unable to complete their terms in office. You've had years of dictatorship under Francois Duvalier and his son, Baby Doc, and so forth. and people have lost confidence in the institutions. In most recent times, we've seen the gangs have taken up arms and have went and released all the prisoners from jail to join forces with them to be able to fill the leadership vacuum. So that right there is what you call a failed state. Dominica is nowhere near that. But because the institution exists and the laws exist, is that the Dominicans have taken sort of like a casual, laissez-faire attitude and allow this government can do no wrong in the eyes of the majority of Dominicans. The government is beyond reproach. That's the situation. And a lot of people in Dominica support this. That's another significant issue you have in Dominica. A lot of Dominicans support what's going on in Dominica. That's the issue, you know.
Wow. All right, Cabral, thank you very much. First hour flew by very, very quickly here. We have to take a break at this time. Folks, let's take a break. We're going to see an ad and hear from Dr. Dale Dangleben on an eat healthy aspect of living. Sometime pretty soon, Dr. Dale will be right here on Civic Vibes to explain much more. But take a break. We'll be back in just a bit. Yes, Dominicans, we're back. This one is from Shanice. She's singing about justice in Dominica.
While he's still on the ground, up and down the police station, failed investigation, no justice for her situation. She don't want a dollar, all she wants is closure, but the system working against her. Magwisa. But if it was chance, you would see the policemen running, coming. Accident up in Virgin Lane, they're moving like a snail. Oh.
Folks, yes, the telephone numbers are stringing along your screen at this time. They are 245-2396 or 615-9470. These are the numbers to call into the program after that all-important break.
Wrong is wrong, whether you rape or you kill, you fraud or you steal, wrong. Wrong is wrong.
Yes, wrong is wrong, as Shani says in song.
For equality, justice with no equity is wrong. Yes, is wrong.
Those of you maybe just tuning in at this time, it's 5 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. We're having that candid conversation with our brother, patriotic brother, Cabral Douglas. He's in the house. The telephone lines are already ringing. Let's see if we can go to facilitate all. This one person has left us. Please call her, try calling us back in just a bit, all right? Shanice is singing the song Fight for Justice.
A well-known pedophile walking the streets with pride after he touched the person child. Even when she smiles, there's pain in her eyes, feeling like she has to hide. Withheld identities, fellas walking free, predators protected by the system. Who writes the law and what they're standing for? They failed us the most when we need them.
Yes, very, very important line. They failed us more when we need them. Shanice, thank you very much. Indeed, we'll get back to that song sometime later when we end the program. But folks, yes, we're back with the live panel here. Brother Gabriel Douglas is our special guest tonight, talking about or extrapolating some of the utterances of Judge Colin Williams, the sitting judge in Dominica. As we wait on your calls, we're going to go back to Gabriel in terms of some more comments. Gabriel, you spoke of, you touched on an aspect the judge spoke on, really, PI stage. I just want you to go back there a little bit. How important is that stage, the preliminary stages in any case as it pertains to justice?
Well, good question, Lofty. It's extremely important because all criminal matters start at the magistrate level, and then the magistrate remit would be limited typically to more minor offenses with lesser periods of sentencing. So minor offenses would stay in the magistrate court, and more serious offenses would be transferred after the inquiry stage to the higher court. And they would require more serious levels of prosecution at the higher court. So the investigation stage is the stage at which the defense will be provided with the brief of evidence. So you'll be notified of the specifics, the witness statements, any physical evidence that might be the prosecution may be using to rely on. And during that stage, the magistrate actually has the power to dismiss the case at that stage. Because in any criminal case, there are a number of elements of the case. They call it the mens rea. So there are a number of mental elements that need to be made out by the prosecution in order to secure a conviction. So the evidence that they're putting forward to prove those elements have to be on a prima facie level made out in the inquiry stage in order for the magistrate to justify transferring it to the high court or to the district court for prosecution. Once it gets to the district court for prosecution, that's where you'll have the pleadings, and then that's when you'll have the trial. All right. So once you get to the higher court, you can, you're pretty much preparing for trial. But when you're at the inquiry stage, you're scrutinizing the evidence to see whether or not the elements of the case can be made out to move forward. Now, let's just take, for example, the incitement case, for example. It's in the news a lot, and everybody's aware of it. So it's a good example to look at. So that case, as it relates to Thompson Fountain, I believe has been transferred to the higher court. But when it was in the inquiry stage, so what you have in the case is you have the opposition organizing a demonstration in Roseau. It was a legal demonstration. They got permission from the police to hold the demonstration. The demonstration took place. It was well attended. A number of people gave speeches. During those speeches, political in nature, a number of leaders called for the resignation of the prime minister. After the demonstration was over, persons who came to the demonstration were involved in criminal activity in the capital, where there was criminal damage to property and so forth. So in an incitement case, what has to be proven and what you have to have evidence to prove is that the individual charge said some words, specific words or actions that incited those criminal elements to commit the criminal damage. So it's a question of causation. Would the criminal damage have occurred had the opposition not organized the demonstration? Probably not, because those persons would not have been assembled in mass in Roseville in the first place. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the opposition caused those individuals to go out and carry out the destruction, right? So that's what the DPP needs to prove, and they need to come to the committal stage, they need to come to the inquiry stage with evidence suggesting that there's a linkage between what those individuals, Thompson, Fountain, Lennox Linton, and others did or said to the actual individuals who carried out the alleged crime. So that's a very important point of the case, because if the evidence cannot stand up to scrutiny at that point, then an application can be made that there is no case to answer. It's a wanting of prosecution, and the judge has the power at that stage to withdraw the charges before it goes up to the higher court. So that's a very important stage of the criminal process. Absolutely.
Wow, that's very, very striking indeed. Alvin, any further thoughts from you folks? The telephone lines are now open. Please use those lines as we're about to, dive into much more deeper stuff, really, the utterances of the judge. Yes, Alvin.
Yeah. No. I wanted to push back on Cabral. Earlier, I think he referenced Haiti, and he compared Haiti to Dominica, and he said, as far as he's concerned, he gave the example of Haiti as a failed state and Dominica not anywhere close. But let me just push back a little on that, Cabral, very quickly. A country whose government considered to have failed at some of its basic responsibility is in a way what can be defined as a failed state. And by that, for example, keeping its legal system working correctly, which we are discussing now, providing public services, electricity, water, education, health, hospital, roads, infrastructure. And let me just go through a short list there very quickly. Area of system and institution. And I agree with you, the laws are there, but the systems have been so compromised. Take the Electoral Commission, non-functional, compromised.
All right, Alvin, just stick a pin in that place. We have a caller on the line. Let's see if we can engage that caller. Just stick a pin, right?
Sure.
Yes. Caller, yes, good evening to you. Civic Vibes, you are on.
Good evening, Lofty. Good evening, Dominica. Good evening, St. Joseph. Mr. Cabral, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Mr. Cabral, I'm in St. Thomas. And when I hear the court spent $10 million to persecute a couple guys, and yet still they cannot bring all the evidence to the court to do what they have to do to those guys, because one man become Speaker of the House, as Joseph Isaac. Cabral, in any other jurisdiction, especially in America, this judge, this DPP, they would already be jailed. Because you can see that persecution against the opposition. You cannot send me to jail. And you're telling me the evidence, you bring in some, and the others, you hide in it. We need to get that thing straight. What is going in Dominica? We see they say, okay, people in jail and they're not calling case. No, that's not true. Because a man bringing illegal guns in Dominica and his case solved within 2 weeks.
All right, caller, I understand your comments. Thank you for that nonetheless. We are talking about the utterances of the High Court judge. Any thoughts on his comment, read the judiciary system in Dominica? All right, I guess the caller has left. Cabral, yes, Alvin, sorry, the caller has left. But thank you very much, caller, for your...
Did Cabral want to comment? I don't know if you'd like to comment.
Well, yes.
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Well, in relation to bringing a prosecution, now, lawyers who are contracted to act on behalf of the DPP are, I understand, King's Counsel. So King's Counsel have a special responsibility and obligation to the court. They're the cream of the crop. So they've established for themselves a reputation of integrity over many years, and I've been appointed to a special category of lawyers, which actually renders more respect and privileges for them. And the lawyers also in most jurisdictions that are bringing any case, could be a civil matter, could be a criminal matter, need to sign a certificate which basically says that the matter that I'm bringing before the court has a reasonable prospect of success. So I would be very, very surprised if a Queen's Counsel out of Trinidad came to Dominica, looked at the brief of evidence, and came to the conclusion that it had no prospects, but proceeded with the case anyway. That would be very unusual, because if the case doesn't have prospects, then it's not going to succeed, and it would be embarrassing for the government and for the Queen's Counsel in terms of his reputation. So, looking at that particular matter, it does appear that there's a prima facie case because you had the demonstration, and you had the riot, you had the property damage. So on the face of it, the elements are there. The question is, did the defendants cause or incite the riot to take place? And that is a question of evidence that the DPP needs to bring before the court to substantiate that claim.
Cabral, one question, Brother Alvin, just before Cabral comes. One question. He can answer it in 30 seconds. Cabral, the case of incitement with the opposition figures in Dominica. If at the end of that process, then there is no case to answer. Does these people, does the opposition as itself, do these people have any legal recourse?
Well, in criminal matters, which is somewhat different to civil matters, if somebody brings an action against you in a civil matter that draws out for an unreasonable period of time, it costs you money to defend and so forth. At the end of the case, when you win, you can claim all your costs back. But unfortunately, in criminal cases, that option is not there. So unfortunately, if you're being prosecuted in the criminal courts, as long as it wasn't a malicious prosecution, right? So in this case, it doesn't appear to be that the prosecution is malicious because, like I said, the elements of the case are there. Senior counsel or King's Counsel have signed off on it. The property damage was caused, so insurance claims were made. So all of the elements were there. So even if the government loses the case, it doesn't appear that there was no case to begin with. And the defense have never made any application at the committal stage that there was no case to answer. So by not making any application to say there's no case to answer at the preliminary stage, you agree that there's a case to answer, and you are preparing yourself to answer the charges when you get to trial, right? So there would be I don't think there'd be any. Yeah.
Quite interesting. Thanks. Yes,
that's interesting. That's interesting. And let me ask Cabral. So that being the case, at what point can the defense say, well, look, this thing is going 8 years, 9 years to have it thrown out? Or how long can it go then? Can it go for another 7 years, 14 years?
Well, that's an issue for the judge in the case. So that the judge has to manage the case in a timely manner, because the members of the opposition are entitled to the presumption of innocence, a fair trial rather, and a speedy trial as well. Those are constitutional rights. And the fact that it's dragging on is simply weakening the prosecution case. The longer it goes on, the harder it becomes to secure a conviction, because of the fact that by the time you get to trial, it could be a decade that has passed. So you're asking people to recall incidents that took place a decade ago, and you have a better opportunity to cross-examine them and to punch holes in what they claim to have occurred 10 years ago. So it's always best for the prosecution, if they're bringing a case, to have the matter heard as quickly as possible. The witnesses are there, they're fresh, they remember what happened, and you're ready to go in a reasonable period of time. So it would be in the prosecution's best interest to have the matter adjudicated as quickly as possible. But if after the prosecution presents its case and the defense finds that the elements of the case have not been properly made out, at that stage, they will have another opportunity to make an application for the charge to be dismissed before it goes to the jury, before it goes for a decision. The earlier you can get it struck out, the better. You don't want to leave it in the hands of the jury if you can avoid that. So you had an opportunity at the acquittal stage. You'll have another opportunity at the end of the presentation of the evidence of the prosecution.
So let me ask you.
Alvin, stick a little pin there. We have another caller on the line. Okay. Caller, yes, good evening. You're on the Civic Vibes Sport.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And I was just, listening to Cabral, Mr. Douglas, and I was just wondering, he's mentioned, he spoke a lot about holding the government accountable by having attorneys file essentially lawsuits against the government. But I'm wondering, I know that he's currently in Australia practicing law. As a Dominican and somebody who I guess your dad, God rest his soul, being that kind of person who fought for the local man, could you file this lawsuit as a Dominican, as a concerned Dominican, to, make the government accountable for the monies that are missing, or something of that nature? Could you possibly do it, or could citizens, together with you, file that lawsuit? Because we keep hearing that things need to be done. We should do this and we should do that. Are you in a position to do that, or could you do it from your jurisdiction? Even though you live overseas, you as a Dominican, can you do it?
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, caller. Very interesting question. Yes, Gabriel.
Well, the thing about the filing of lawsuits in various jurisdictions, cross the jurisdictions, you have to be called to the bar in a particular jurisdiction. So even if you're called to the bar in country A, that doesn't give you what the lawyers refer to the rights of audience in country B. So what happens sometimes is that you could apply to the government to get admitted to practice in the jurisdiction if you need to appear in that jurisdiction. Even within the Caribbean context, lawyers admitted in Trinidad need to apply for admission in Dominica before they can appear, right? So it can be done technically. I could come to Dominica and apply to be admitted and then appear on behalf of whomever. But it's always best to have a local attorney who works in the jurisdiction file the case because he's a local attorney, because he's been admitted to file lawsuits in that jurisdiction. And then others who have an interest in the case could assist in the preparation of documents, in the due diligence, in scrutinizing certain legislation, and work as part of a legal team. So what I would suggest is that local attorneys form a team of individuals. They could be home and abroad, and they collaborate on efforts to bring these matters to light. But at the end of the day, you're going to need a local attorney that's been admitted to the bar in that particular jurisdiction. So seeing as there's hundreds of lawyers that are admitted to practice law in Dominica, who live in Dominica, who have law practices in Dominica, it would only make sense for them to lead the way, and people like myself could be of assistance to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriel, for answering that.
Yeah, let me ask Cabral, earlier on, when he referenced that the judge is the one to pretty much bring a resolution to this matter as it relates to the charges against his opposition guy. What if the judge fails to do that? Where does that put the defendant? So the judge, it keep being deferred. The judge is not doing what the judge should. Is he going to sit there for another 5 years? What redress do they have? Can they appeal on, what, is there any grounds? Or do they just have to go along with the flow pretty much?
Well, your defense attorney will be pressing the issue that the matter has been running for too long, and that this has adverse effects on his client, and that, you know, it's becoming cumbersome and burdensome and expensive for his client. And as a result of that, it's having an effect, it's having an impact. Like the High Court judge spoke about the impact of delays in a trial. Like, I think the delays in this particular trial have been due to the fact that several magistrates have recused themselves from the case for one reason or the other. So that has led to the delays in this matter. But usually the delays in the matter are agreed to by the lawyers themselves. So a lot of times the lawyers themselves are the ones seeking a delay, seeking an adjournment, right? For whatever reason that they're bringing before the court. A lot of times the parties involved in the matter, before they go to court, will seek to come to an agreement as to whether or not they agree that the matter should be delayed. Sometimes the lawyers are benefiting from the fact that the matter is delayed, because each time you have to come to court, you have to pay your lawyer as well, which is not ideal scenario. But the overarching responsibility to ensure that the matter is moving along, and every time you make an appearance, the matter is moving along expeditiously to the next stage, is the responsibility of the judge to ensure that he's not going to tolerate any unnecessary, unreasonable delays. If a judge is conflicted, for example, and a party makes an application for him to recuse himself, then that is a good reason why you should have a delay, because you don't want a conflicted judge presiding over your matter, because it compromises your ability to get a fair trial. So I think about 2 or 3 judges in the Lennox Linton matter have recused themselves from the case. So those are actually good reasons to have the matter delayed, because you need to make sure that the parameters are in place. You have a judge that is not conflicted, that is going to be fair and objective, that is going to hear the evidence on both sides and and not be unduly influenced to make a decision one way or the other. So you actually cannot proceed to the next stage until you're sure that those fundamentals are in place, because you'll live to regret it down the road. So there's a number of reasons why the matters are delayed, and a lot of the times it has to do with the lawyers themselves.
True.
Agreeing
to it.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Gabriel. We have somebody who has been waiting on the line for some time. Caller, thanks for holding. You're on.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen. First off, I want to just give a thank you to Lofty for his program and his platform of education and whatnot. And I want to thank, Brother Carver Douglas, Mr. Carver Douglas, and also Alvin, Mr. Alvin. Thank you. I will try to be as succinct and brief as possible. But 2 things I want to point out based on the conversation I'm listening to, and I want to ask. Besides our opposition, and you mentioned that there's lawyers in Dominica that can file the cases and whatnot, what is the other checks and balance we can place on the government in the sense of what the things that they're doing? Because we see that the opposition is getting a constant fight. They're being, they're trying to use legal means to fight them, right? So what are the other means that we have for checks and balances? The other thing I want to point out, based on our conversation tonight, we can clearly state that the Bar Association is not working in the interests of the people. Mm-hmm. Because if we have an issue where that we know that wrong is being done, money is being hid, and nothing is being done, then something is not working, somebody not doing something right. So we need to call on the Bar Association, and they need to come out and say, this is what we've done, this is not what we've tried, and this is what that's not working. But clearly something is wrong. So I just want to point out that, yes, even in America, we in Dominica, we admire American politics and we pay attention to what's going on. And America, they have the checks and balances in terms of the House and the Congress. Our checks and balances, the opposition, they fight in the opposition day to day. So what is our other check and balance? And even the Bar Association, it seems, is quiet about this situation and how to move forward. Now, I also want to put out there that maybe they're afraid of victimization as well, you know, because they're trying to make their money too, or like Cabral said, people join law because they love it. But some of them join it for the money. But, you know, so thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the vibes. Thank you for the education, and hopefully we can pave a way forward. Give thanks. Bless.
All right. Give thanks, my brother, to you as well. Thank you very much for your very succinct points and question that you raised here. One being of the Bar Association in terms of their reluctance to act on behalf of the people. And also, Cabral, the brother was asking about what, apart from the official opposition or the opposing team, what other options are there available to the people in terms of legal redress?
Well, the media is considered to be the fourth pillar of democracy. So any functioning democracy needs to have a capable media. And if you look in the United States, for example, every other day you have a press conference with a representative of the president fielding questions. But they're not softball questions. They're actually trying to make inquiries into the failures and the deficiencies of the government, and the government is forced to on their feet to answer questions for an hour. So the Prime Minister of Dominica will say in his defense that every single month, I think it is, he has a press conference which runs for an hour or two, and whatever question is put to him, he answers the question. You know, he answers the questions, and the press conferences take place, and he has a good relationship with the media, you know. So there needs to be journalists attending the press conferences and keeping the government accountable on their toes by asking them the pertinent questions. And if you don't get the answer satisfactorily from the question that you asked, then you need to ask a follow-up question, right? And respectfully that, you know, thank you for the question, but you didn't answer it. So here's what I would like to follow up with. On such and such a date, on such and such a program, you said that had it not been for the housing option, that the Treasury would have an additional $1 billion that was deposited into it. What did you mean by that? What happened to the $1 billion? Are you saying that $1 billion that was intended to be deposited in the Treasury of Dominica has been diverted? If so, what is the basis of that? Is there any legal legal obligation? Is there any do you have any legal right to divert monies that have been collected based on the assets of the state, i.e. Dominica's passports, not to deposit them in the Treasury and to divert them to a third party? That's the question that I'm asking, you know. Force the government to answer these questions, right? So there's the media. Then, of course, the other check is the parliament, of course. But I understand that could be challenging because the government has the majority of the seats and they're controlling the agenda. And it's difficult for the few members of the opposition to be able to be heard, especially when the government is controlling the agenda and the Speaker of the House is limiting their ability to explore the issues that they feel are pertinent. So there's the parliament, there is the media. I think the media is the big one, because we're in a 24-hour news cycle. There's a number of talk shows, radio shows, television shows, internet, and also the Prime Minister himself will say that he's been very open and transparent because every week he has a press conference. Anybody can ask him any question they want, and he always comes out of the press conference looking good. I've never seen Prime Minister Skerrit come out of a press conference looking frustrated, looking flustered, looking like he wasn't able to answer the questions put in front of him. So it must mean that we're not asking the right questions.
Let me make a quick comment on that, Cabral. Last year, and Lofty, bear me out on that. Last year, I think there was a press conference where a journalist, a media person, asked a question regarding a building that was going up in Roseau. And the Prime Minister took great offense to that and pretty much shut down that journalist. More recently, in Calabishi, you had a situation where the villagers were quite upset about a school that was being built, again, without consultation with the community. And they started protesting to the extent where the Prime Minister finally got himself up there and tried to meet with the residents to explain, in his own way, And a journalist, I believe it was Emo News, if I'm not mistaken, tried to ask a question regarding the issue. And the Prime Minister deliberately said to this young lady, I'm not answering your question, just like that. You're not the press, I'm not answering your question. And just shoved her aside. Never responded, never gave an opportunity to anything like that. So I'm saying all of this to say, again, as I went back earlier, there may be quote unquote institutions, but they have failed. And that's where we are. And earlier on, you mentioned Haiti. And although we don't have much time left on the program, but it is interesting to discuss, because while we may not have had a Papa Doc and what you referred to, we have situations in Dominica that is happening now, issues that is taking us on the verge of that. Dominica is the only island in the Caribbean that have not had a change of government in 20 years. No other island have had that. Not Jamaica, not even Grenada, where you had Gary and his mongoose gangs, or Guyana. Nowhere else. And
we have to be correct, Alvin. St. Vincent is a little ahead of us.
Well,
where Ralph has been there for some time, at least one term older, longer than scared. Yes.
But nowhere else. So while I agree with you, the press, and you're right, not just the press, but I think other institutions, the business sector, the private sector, the trade unions, even the
society,
the civic society, need to play a more vocal role in the issues that are happening in Dominica, as it relates to where our democracy is going, or the rule of rule of law and order. There need to be a more vocal thing. I just wanted to make those comments.
Well, I have a question for Alvin. What do you think is the reasons plural, why Dominica is one of the few countries that have not had a change of government in 20 years? What is the reason for that?
Complacency by the citizens, folks refusing to speak up as they should, that should speak up, like your colleagues, the attorneys, people who are in a position to raise the issue, to educate the people, and not doing that. You have enablers, several enablers that are enabling what's taking place. So they are my real issues.
Is there anything?
Go ahead. No.
Is there anything that you could say that is good about the Dominica Labour Party and Roosevelt Skerritt over the last 20 years? Is there anything positive?
Well, the only thing I can say, they're good at manipulating the minds of the people. They're very good at that. They're good at manipulating the minds of the people and keeping them in a dependency syndrome state. They're good at that. They're very good at that.
And does that cause the government to maintain its popularity?
To some extent, it does. Don't you agree with that, Lofty?
Yeah.
Well, to answer Cabral, anything that is rotten from the core, even if it looks pretty on the outside, like Nasio said in song, then it is not good. So there's nothing good, Cabral, I can say about this government headed by Roosevelt. Absolutely. Because if I am convinced as a citizen of the Commonwealth of Dominica that the Labour Party, whatever passes for government now, uses trickery, manipulation, bribery, whatever it is, to get to that political pinnacle. And so once that process that they get to that high office is tampered, if is contaminated, to me, there's nothing of substance that come out there. And unless and until that process is cleaned up and we on a more even keel, as it were, and the same Labour Party can come back there, I would have no problem. But as for now, absolutely nothing.
Okay, let me ask you a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So let's say we have electoral reform that we think is necessary, that we're advocating for, and the government calls an election, and it's the same result that they've been having over the 20 years. Where to from there?
Brother Cabral, it cannot be the same result. Cannot, never. Because I'm saying, if we would have a relatively transparent, free, fair process, I can tell you, there's no magic in this one. They may win, yes, but that landslide 18-2-1, this free, no, Cabral. I can tell because I'm in Dominica. Matter of fact, I'm Dominica. So yes, and what I have been witnessing on the ground, the sentiments that I hear from my people every day, Cabral, is Lofty. Things are hard. Lofty, we need a change. Lofty, how is this? And sometimes I ask myself, Cabral, out of let's say 100 people I speak to in a day, I'm just using that as an example. 75 of these people tell me they did not vote for the government. They're not in support of the government. So it's either they're really deceptively lying to me, or things are so bad that we are on the verge of, as you alluded to, Haiti, and we don't know.
So how does the government maintain its popularity under the conditions that you described? Because normally, under the condition that you described, the government will become increasingly, gradually unpopular, and you wouldn't see so many people speaking in support of it. How does this government manage to maintain popularity?
To say of late, I've been hearing persons and seeing persons being much more vocal and even much more active oriented. So that I must give the people. But for far too long, we have been this passive set of people. And as I said before, the evidence is there to show the Dominican Labour Party have been manipulating how they do things every electoral cycle. Until now, they have perfected the art of stealing election. So even with these reforms that we speak of, if the people, not politicians, if the people are not conscious, we are not resolute, we are not resilient, as the phrase goes, about deciding what we as a people need for our country to survive in terms of its democracy, then these guys will continue to run amok with the system. So I am even very fearful about the now extra thrust for electoral, as it were, reform.
But Cabral, I don't think, and I'm not on the ground as Lofty. I visited Dominica 2 weeks ago, not 2 weeks ago, last December for Christmas. I spent 2 weeks down there. And it's not a question of the popular, I don't think the government is popular as it appears to be. You see what I'm saying? And I don't have the figures right before me right now, but even the last 3 election cycles, the voter turnout has been decreasing tremendously. There is this apathy people have about elections in general. So even where they presumably win, they won with a very much lower voter turnout. It is nowhere what it used to be in the days when your father and your uncle and those persons, junior time in election, okay? Now, you have a few persons, a few enablers that allowed, and you have the elite. In the system, in any democracy where you have a few of the elites controlling, and you have the situation where you keep these persons dependent on you. So this guy has to come to you every month to pay his child's school fee, to get a $300, and they may choose not to say anything, and they're scared. There's a lot of fear going around. So this question of popularity is not there, period. The question, and I agree with Lofty, if we enter this race in a fair man's position, we're playing on the playing field, we have a referee, we're playing this match as it should. There is no way I believe that this government can win an election. The CCJ made the point that the electors list, which form the central aspect of any elections in any democracy, appeared to have been, I'm trying to use the word that they use, but it was compromised, it was tainted. And they were reinforcing that based on a comment that the sitting judge Glasgow made on the matter. So even latent compliance or something, even Glasgow recognized that there was an issue with the list. Glasgow himself recognized that and made that comment. And the CCJ reinforces that. The last election that they had in 2022, The OAS made a comment that one observer observed that they went to a polling district and the clerk there could not determine the individual name and identify the person and the name on the list. And it was pretty much, they just had to go by whatever the guy said. That's me and that's me. And he was allowed to vote. And that was just one incident that the observer pointed out. How many of those that may have gone unnoticed?
Yeah.
So that is where we are at the moment. And I think what has to happen and what we've been, and I see on the feed, a lot of persons are saying, okay, so you guys been talking and talking, what needs to be done? There need to be more persons stepping up to the plate. And I'm glad you pretty much committed to assisting attorneys back home. I'm glad you send that, send that offer out there to them, and I hope they're listening. That although you may not be able to file yourself in Dominica, but you can work with attorneys in Dominica to take certain matters to the courts.
Yeah.
Definitely. That needs to be done. So I'm putting it out there to the attorneys that are interested in examining some of these matters and moving them forward. We need to work together and do what we have been trained to do, and to force the government to answer questions so that we can have a transparent, functioning government that is working in the best interests of the people of Dominica, both at home and abroad.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Cabral, for that commitment on your part to the people of Dominica. Folks, it is 13 minutes to the hour of 8 o'clock. Alvin, we have some messages to read from the live feed, but one person listening to the conversation via YouTube, and that person is writing, what about the tainted election process, the inflated list and no voter ID cards? What about paying flight for voters from overseas to vote and fly back the next day? These, that person said, are critical issues. And he also commented by saying the CCJ was concerned about the taints that occur in our elections in Dominica. What are some of the comments, Alvin, that you're seeing there that you want to highlight in terms of, you know?
Well, one just came in there from Gina Carswell, which
Cabral's way. Yes.
We need Civic to be part of the school. I think it will help. Some young persons don't know what's going on in Dominica and how government works. So that's just a comment. I think that has been said time and time again, the fact that we need to introduce it. Again,
Alvin, I took note of a comment that someone made by the name of Ferdinand Lawrence, I believe, basically suggesting that we at Civic Vibes, all we do each and every Sunday is to come and talk about the problems. He's saying and suggesting we need now to start talk solutions. Your response, Alvin?
No, well, I think it's a valid observation, and we come in here every Sunday and articulating the issues is to allow Dominicans at home and abroad to make a more informed position on what needs to be done. So we just heard from Brother Cabral that he's saying, hey guys, I'm available for us to take certain action on certain matters. We've the Sunday before, when we had this discussion and we were speaking electoral reform, one of the suggestions that came from our discussion was to, in light of a meeting that was taking place at the Electoral Commission, not sure if the meeting would have been in person or via Zoom, but it would have been a good show of effort or symbolism, whatever you might want to call it, to picket the electoral office, Electoral Commission office, outside the office on the day of the meeting. Why can't a few Dominicans go out there and hold a picket and show that they want electoral reform? So we've proposed various solutions time and time again, but at the end of the day, we, especially those on the ground, unfortunately, Cabral is in Australia, I'm in Atlanta, and we will play and do our part as best as we can. But the guys on the ground need to take certain action. I heard the truckers. I saw a video a week ago with some guy who represents the truckers complaining bitterly of they not getting any work. No work. They can go to the bank, they can borrow, they can do anything. Why can't the truckers take their vehicle down to Roseau one day? If it means blocking the goddamn road and toot their horns, drive around Roseau tooting their horns that, hey, we're suffering, we want work, we want work, we want work. And all the 16 dumpers that they have, or the 12 dumpers driving around Roseau tooting their horns, we want work, we want work. Why can't we do that? We did a lot of those things in the 70s, you know. I'm a product of the 70s. And let me tell you, we took action. I'm a graduate of St. Mary's Academy. And during 73, we have had enough of the way we were being treated in the school. And we said one day we're not going to take more. And we protested and we walked out.
Yeah.
The rest is history.
True. Alvin, it's 9 minutes to the hour of 8 o'clock. We have limited time here with Cabral, who have been very good so far in terms of his eloquence and delivery on the utterances of the judge and Dominica's predicament as it pertains to our justice, or injustice, I should say, system in Dominica. Cabral, as we're about to bring that program to a wrap in just a bit, any final polishing up you'd want to make on your utterances as it pertains to the judge's statement?
Well, as far as the judge's statement is concerned, I think what he's getting at is that the administrators in the magistrate's court need to have better training, better time management, better sense of duty and obligation. So maybe they could look at recruitment, training seminars, sending them off to regional courts for training so they could see how other jurisdictions operate. So those are some of the things that they could do to ensure that these matters are being dealt with by individuals who know exactly what their responsibilities are. As far as solutions, I think we've been proposing solutions for the entire time. We talked about the press conferences. Journalists need to attend the press conferences. If the Prime Minister is having a press conference and you're a journalist, you have to be at the press conference. There's nowhere else you should be other than the press conference. And prepare yourself before you go to the press conference. Look at the statements that were made in the past. Look at the pertinent issues that are taking place at the moment. Attend the press conference and fire your question off to the Prime Minister. If you're not allowed access to the press conference, then you're being denied access as a journalist. Then you can make an issue out of that. Write an article about that. Let that go viral on Facebook, that journalists are not being allowed to attend press conferences to ask questions. So then the lawyers, which is the main thing that we've suggested, needs to be more active. The Bar Association, if you're a lawyer in Dominica and you're interested in justice, join the Bar Association. Become an active member of the Bar Association. Raise these issues at a Bar Association level.
Talking about the Bar, Cabral, how important is that association to Dominica and the discussion? How important, how crucial is that Bar Association?
That's very crucial because the Bar Association is an independent body of persons that have been called to the bar in Dominica that are pretty much acting like the gatekeepers, the watchdog for democracy. That's what their function is. So if there are deficiencies in the judiciary, the Bar Association should be at the forefront of addressing those issues, making recommendations, taking on cases pro bono. If there are individuals languishing in prison on remand for several years, members of the Bar Association should be taking action in terms of reopening those cases on a pro bono basis to assist those individuals to be able to get a speedy trial and to get justice in the system. There are hundreds of Dominican lawyers in Dominica. By doing that, it may not be financially rewarding, but you will associate yourself with the pursuit of justice. And by doing that, you will raise your profile and you will attract cases from other individuals who may be in a position to remunerate you accordingly. But the thing about it, you can't be sitting there silently as a lawyer with all this injustice going on in society. So that is important. And that has nothing to do with the government or the Prime Minister. That has to do with those of you who have been called to the bar, playing your rightful role within the system. So it's all the system exists, the laws exist, the Constitution exists, but it boils down to individuals using the mechanisms at their disposal to bring about the outcomes that they want. right? So these are the recommendations. We made a number of recommendations tonight. We made a number of suggestions tonight. We made a number of plans of action tonight. So I disagree with the caller saying we're just talking about the problem. No, we've identified the problem and we've suggested solutions to the problems going forward.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. Cabral, I want to thank you, my brother, very much on behalf of the Civic Vibes team and also the many, many folks listening here and abroad. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your very motivating words. Thank you for everything in terms of you going deeper in the utterances of a sitting judge in Dominica in terms of the scathing report that he gave the judiciary system in Dominica. Any final thoughts, Cabral? Anybody want to shout out before you leave us?
Yes, I just want to shout out the people of Dominica, people in the Portsmouth constituency, all of the fans of the program. I myself is a fan of the program, so I always tune in regularly. So it's always an honor to be invited on a program that you hold in such high regard. And special thanks to Lofty, who is on the ground every day, articulating the concerns of Dominicans and being able to speak fearlessly, truth to power. That's what I'm talking about. You know, we need more Lofties to be able to attend these press conferences and to raise the issues that are pertinent and to have a public discourse about it. There used to be a time when we used to be able to discuss and engage and participate in the democracy without necessarily needing to go through the government. So thanks very much, Lofty. We appreciate what you're doing. Alvin, keep up the good work. And I'll be staying tuned to you guys as usual.
Well, brother, once we get such fine words, accolades coming from a man like you, Cabral, then we are, Alvin and I have no other choice but to just oblige. And say,
yeah, we got to keep fighting, bro. And that's all we're doing. We're going to keep fighting.
Yeah. All right, Cabral, thank you, my brother. Do enjoy what is left of the
Cabral.
night.
Have a good
all
one.
Right, good night, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.
Take care. Right, bye-bye.
Cool. All right, folks, you just heard a very, very interesting, very informative conversation for Cabral Douglas. We're going to take that break now before we end here. Play that ad for Dr. Dill Dangleben one more time, 2 more times that is, and then ask Alvin for his final wrapping up comments, mine as well, and I'll bring the program to a wrap for tonight. So let's get that on our screen now in terms of that ad for Brother Dill. Little computer glitch, but that's how it is. Thank you very much indeed, Brother Dill Dangleben and crew. We're going to take a little from King Dice and then the wrapping up comments here.
There was a time not long ago when it was safe to chastise your government. The opposition leadership, the respect of the Prime Minister and President. Now we have a tyrannical democracy where misplaced priority creates abject poverty. Post-government policy is living dangerously. So now truth is a sin, and lies and deception are the virtues now trending. If I say the government in my land don't care for the local man, I'm a wanted man.
Yes, folks, wanted man from the man King Dice, 10 times king in Dominica.
Has been bequeathed to wretched.
Yes, Dice will come back for that song in entirety as we close. But Alvin, we are on the hour. Your final comments, my brother.
Yeah, well, I think the program again today was a very interesting program. Very good conversation with Brother Cabral. And even those of our many folks who were on the live on Facebook and YouTube made some very good comments and great observation. The folks who called in as well made some very good comments. And I think that is where we have to have some measure of hope, that despite where we are today, there are still a number of persons out there. When we look at, the responses on our social media platform, both in Dominica and out of Dominica, that want to see a better Dominica. This is what we're all aiming for. It's nothing to do with any personal attack of any one individual, a group of person. It is just that we want to see a better Dominica. And every opportunity I get, I always want to really say thank you to you, Lofty, because like they say, who's in the kitchen feels the heat. I'm not in the kitchen, so I'm not feeling as much heat. I may get a sense, but you're in the kitchen, you feel the heat. So persons like yourself, Sister Rosie Felix, the Johnson Bostons, the Lennox Lintons, and the Spragues, and the number of persons on the ground who are fighting that cause need to continue to fight that cause. So I hope that the fellow attorneys who may have been listening will take on the commitment that Brother Douglas gave, that as an attorney is prepared to work with them. So great program, good week to everyone. Hope we have a very this week is for those of us in the Christian community, Holy Week. So I trust that those of us have a good week. Stay safe, stay focused. And let's continue to pray and do what is right for our country, Dominica. And to those, much is given, much is expected. And that is one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing every Sunday, because I think Dominica expect from me what they have given to me over the years to make me who I am today. And I have to give back to country.
Post-government policy is living dangerously. So now truth is a sin, and lies and deception are the virtues now trending. If I say the government in my land don't care for the local man, I'm a wanted man. Simple truth. If I say my green Dominica has been bequeathed to Red China, I'm a wanted man. Simple truth. If I say Parliament has become a comedy competition, I'm a wanted man. Wanted for speaking truth, wanted for caring about the youth, wanted for wanting fairness in my land. So I'd much rather be a wanted man than to be a yes man to a godless, corrupt politician.
All right, Dominicans, that's it. Thank you very much for your eyes and ears each and every time. That is where we must bring down the curtains on things here for yet another program. Saying thank you, very big thank you to our special invited guest this evening, who basically had a splendid delivery here, Brother Cabral Douglas. And to you, all of you out there, thank you each and every time.
And character assassins on the radio.
We've got 2 more verses from the Dice and we're done. That's it.
Never before Have we ever seen a little money make Jumbie dance so?
Dominicans, yes, we have to mount together. Say united we stand, divided we fall.
Blessings. Parents treading the future of their children.
What I can say in my final comments is that the system that we have been operating under in Dominica, especially under this Labour Party regime, it is very, very undemocratic in nature, and I resembled that regime to that of the Kremlin in Russia.
If I say law enforcement is blind to the real criminals in these times,
so anyone and any organization that resembles opposition, yes, the knack is to crush you even before you start. That's the system we operate in Dominica. I can't say it any better.
Simple truth, simple truth.
So yes, we become wanted people in our own land, says King Dice.
All the time, I'm a wanted man.
But we got to do what we have to do to stay afloat. Thank you much, Dominicans, for tying our cords together. Let's fight together. We will reap the victory together as well.
So I'd much rather be a wanted man.
So on that note, on behalf of Alvin Thomas and the Civic Vibes team, we bid you guys a pleasant good evening.
Snatcher's hands. Hiya, hey, hiya, hey, hiya, hey, You see, one man is an easy target, but I'm just one of my brothers who they don't know. Seeds of righteousness, when they're buried, they don't die, they just grow and grow. They taught us when we see wrong, we should take a stand. Evil thrives only when good people are silent. A man who hates opposition is a danger to all men. But the preachers and teachers of yesterday are looking the other way. If I say some pastors and priests in this land are hypocrites, I'm a wanted man. Simple truth. If I say 2 decades we've been lost and things are getting worse, I'm a wanted man. Simple truth. If I say today's school children are growing in violence, I'm a wanted man. Wanted for speaking truth, wanted for caring about the youth, wanted for wanting fairness in my life. So I'd much rather be a wanted